everybody, and welcome to episode 76 of All About African Violets. All About African Violets is musically sponsored by Ted Yoder. You can hear and purchase his wonderful music on his website at tedyoder.com. It is also available from iTunes. Hi everybody, come on into my sunroom. It's dark, it's Friday night. You can kind of see the lights from the kitchen and the window behind me. Sorry, I'm trying to get my head there so you can't see, you won't be disturbed by them, but then I'm crooked in the frame. Oh well. Looks like they're growing out of my hair, which looks very interesting today. You know, I know some of you do tune in just to see what my hair looks like because it is so cold here in Chicagoland that I had to break out the industrial strength hat today, which is a gigantic and really, really warm hat. It is very cold here, and I know that it is very cold in other parts of the country as well, so stay warm. I got my favorite green shirt on, my shirt that's too big. I don't even care. It's just so soft and warm. I just love it. It's cold today, so I had to wear it. Anyway, it's been a crazy week here as usual. And I'm so glad so many of you enjoyed seeing the plant judging last week with Joyce and Kent. I do have some more footage from that weekend that I'm going to share with you shortly. But before we do that, let's jump right into tips and treasures. Let me grab my glasses. I should have moved that table closer. I have another question from Dakota. He said he had a question regarding his plant, Ma's Qing Dynasty, and here's what he says. He says, my plant for some reason has darker foliage in the center of the plant, and under those dark leaves it has a red reverse backing. The outer leaves of that plant are, as described, medium green. I do notice that when those center leaves grow out, the darker foliage and the red reverse backing slowly disappears over time and turns back to medium green. But some foliage still has a little bit of the dark foliage and red reverse backing even as they do grow out. I have backups of this plant, and one has the same problem as what I just mentioned, and the other one is growing its normal medium green color in the center. What could be the issue with this plant? Is this normal for some plants to do this sort of thing? Well, good question, Dakota. I went to Joyce and asked her and Kent, and she said, Jeff might have a more scientific response, but I think it is not unusual for a plant to have variations in the amount of pigment on the reverse. I think this is partially related to nutrition and temperature. Generally, it seems that the more the plant is thriving, the more likely it is to have some pigment visible. Kent was somewhat non-committal on the question though, so it might be better to ask Jeff. So I did ask Jeff, and he said, as I recall, Ma's Qing Dynasty is one of the plants that shows yellow in its blooms. And then he says, yes, First Class shows it as a white with blue edges with yellow streaks. It is not uncommon for the yellows, which usually do have medium green foliage, to show darker foliage, sometimes due to red reversal pigments being expressed. However, when they do this, you usually get some changes in the bloom color too. Kent and Joyce are correct that this is often tied up with environmental factors, but when the plant is a yellow and changes to a darker foliage, I get suspicious that the plant is sporting. Environmental factors may trigger the sports, but my guess is that the plant is not going to revert back to description. If I had to guess, I think the flowers of this darker foliage plant will show wider areas of blue, less white and yellow, and perhaps even begin to show a tint of red in the centers. In short, it sounds to me like the plant has sported and will no longer be true to type. The grower might be able to recover the original plant by taking leaf cuttings with leaves that are the original lighter green. Any leaf with red should be avoided. Dakota, I hope that helps you. Great question and good answers here. I always learn something. Every time I talk to Dr. Jeff, I learn something. So I hope that's very helpful. Well, as I said, I do have some more footage left from Nebraska, and today I'm going to share it with you. And there is some important information in this piece of footage that's coming up. So take a look, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi everybody, I am here in Fremont, Nebraska with Joyce and Kent Stork. And in fact, we're at their house, and it's really cool. It's a beautiful home. And you've seen for the last couple of weeks some footage that I was able to capture at their shop. We did a tour, we did some judging, we had a really good time. And I got all of this footage because we're crazy. And at the last minute, Joyce said, why don't you come to Nebraska and we could do all these things? And the reason that I wanted to do them is that this is the final episode of All About African Violets. And that's kind of hard for me to say.
Yeah, it sounds official.
Yikes, it sounds official. Joyce in particular was there at the very beginning, and so I really wanted her and Kent to be here as we close. I knew from the first time that we spoke about this and about creating it that this podcast series would be finite, that it would have an end. And the end is here. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have a conversation, and I wanted you guys to be a part of it. And so thank you for having me come to Nebraska. We've just had the greatest day. Yeah. I flew in Saturday night late. We spent all day of this Sunday together, and we'll be flying out very, very early in the morning tomorrow to get back and go right to work. So this was literally, we cooked this up on Monday, and here I am. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, you guys, it was really amazing. We were sitting in our hotel room. Joyce and I were roommates at the National Convention in Detroit.
And I was at home.
You were home.
Working.
You weren't
right.
there. But
right.
we were there, and at the general membership meeting, somebody talked about social media, and I kept thinking, we're there. We could have a bigger presence for African Violets on social media, and Joyce and I, then later we were talking, and I said, listen, I think I could do this. I think that I could make a podcast. And I wanted to, the timing was good because I wanted to start when I was starting over, because I lost my entire collection. And we kind of came full circle with judging, to really show what plants, when we were doing the judging in that episode. So
it was quite a moment because sitting in that room that day, when you said, I know what I'm going to do, it was like you had full vision of the whole series of podcasts. And it's really been fun to watch that it's all really come together. And
thank you.
I think the things that we talked about that day, you were trying to help me even understand what podcasts were at that point.
And now Joyce is the queen of Facebook.
No.
She's on there all the time.
No,
yes, she is.
Yeah, that's true. But,
sometimes when she shouldn't be.
But the truth of it is that your understanding of social media at that point was really instrumental to the membership drive that we have going on now, because for years we felt like we couldn't find people that wanted to grow African violets. In the 50s and 60s, people were coming out of the woodworks that were growing violets and had questions, and they came to the society. But that was a different age when print media ruled. And in those days, you could put up a poster in a garden center and you could attract a crowd of thousands. And nobody's looking at posters in garden centers these days.
Not anymore.
And so now it's that social media. And I think you really opened it up for me that day also, because boy, once we understood the podcast and you figured out that you could do it.
Yeah, it's certainly
everything
been
else grew out.
a real adventure, at least for me anyway, and I'm so grateful to have people like you to help me. These are two of my real experts, you guys. That I would ask Joyce questions all the time, and Kent would chime in, and because I'm not an expert. I'm an experienced grower, but I'm not an expert. But I love violets, and I remember when we sat down, when we were in the room, I was writing stuff down and going, I think this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And I felt at that time that if I was able to get all the interviews that I'd hoped to get, that coupled with general information and special things, different stuff going on, that I would have about 18 months worth of material, and that is pretty much exactly where we are.
Yeah.
Almost exactly.
Yeah.
So
And we could go on being redundant, but
yeah, I don't think that is. I mean, and that's part of what has prompted me to go. Okay, it's time. It's time to keep moving forward. Really, is what
Yeah.
it is.
it's no small job to get that podcast ready on a Saturday night.
And you
You
can
know-
spend more time growing your plants again.
Well, that is true. That is very true. You know, many of you guys have commented time and again that they think that this does take a lot of work, and you know what? It does. It does. It's a real commitment to do, and for 70 odd weeks, I've never missed an episode. I've been faithful and consistent every Sunday from the beginning, and I think that initially I knew that I had to do that to try to build an audience, and so that people would know that every week there was going to be new content, and it was going to be steady and hopefully interesting. And generally fun. And you know, I have a lot of friends who don't even grow violets who watch, and they just tune in to see what my hair looks like. So
What? Yeah, I did that a lot.
I know.
The one thing that's going to happen for you though now is that you will no longer have a forced reason why you have to look at your plants closely every single week. Now it's going to be easier for you to let it slide and just what we call throw water.
Well, let me tell you that there have been weeks like that during the podcast as well. That happens. I think that happens anytime. You know, I've mentioned this before. One of the things I learned from Dorothy Kosowski in Southern California, she is a tremendous grower, is that the difference between a good grower and a champion grower is that a champion grower checks their plants every day.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a walk by the stand and goes, this one needs a turn, this one needs a turn, that leaf needs to go. I mean, that's what you do, Kent.
Oh,
We've seen you do it on it.
Lots of times
Yeah.
when we get really bogged down at the holidays with other business, or a whole bunch of funerals come together and I'm spending hours at my work table downstairs, I will at least go upstairs and walk around the room and make sure that nothing major has gone wrong.
Right. Nothing, the
And
wick hasn't quit.
usually I'm doing a little bit of grooming or
Yeah.
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 I
And
find
if
that I
he's
do that.
not, he's really grumpy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Worse than usual.
Well, I really appreciated that you guys have started to do a couple of little videos here and there that you've been posting on Facebook. I hope you're going to keep doing that. That's kind of cool.
Probably we will. They're kind of lame since we just do them with the, phone. But
Well, I just do this with a kind of a point and shoot camera. That's from the beginning been what that is, and my tripod, which, does anyone know what this piece is? It fell off, and I haven't been able to find out where it goes back on the tripod. So I don't know.
oh well.
We can have our son come take a look. He's
He's
very good
okay, that's true.
mechanically.
Okay,
He
that's
would
great.
probably find it very
Oh, that
quickly.
would be good.
Maybe
Okay,
not. Maybe.
that'd be great.
Maybe. No guarantees.
Well, the tripod is standing up, and it made it here to Nebraska with me on the plane. So,
This is good.
so
this is
and
good.
so.
So do you have any future planned for your podcast tripod?
Well, I have to say there's at least one interview that I wasn't able to get in a timely fashion, and that is with Joe Bruns, the creator of First Class 2. But I spoke with Joe recently, and he's very agreeable to being interviewed. So there'll be a special here and there, I'm sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
From time to time, because I would really love to share that with you guys, and I'm thinking maybe if I can catch up with him at National in June, that we'll be able to do that. So there'll be a break, but I'll be back, I'm sure, in bits and pieces, because National, I think, is going to be so amazing.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
In June, and I'm hoping shoot some footage there and
I
share it.
think it's going to be a huge convention, and I think it's going to be smart for people to register for it early when the
Yeah.
information comes out in the.
Pay attention.
On the
As soon as
website.
it hits the website, guys, make your reservations, book your hotel, and be ready to go.
The thing is, AVSA blocks off a certain number of rooms in the
Mhm.
hotel, and you
Mhm.
never know how many. In the last few years, they've been blocking off enough for about 400 people to attend the convention. I really think it's entirely possible this year we could go 500 or even 600
Wow,
people.
that would be so
Because
great.
Nashville has so many attractions, and going to Optimara Greenhouses is such an amazing opportunity. And we're right in a middle ground where there's a lot of really great growers that are
Mhm,
within a
mhm.
one-day drive of
Yes.
convention.
Wow.
Yes. Well, and
Well, I'm
at
gonna
the
drive. I'm gonna try
yeah,
to drive.
at the
yeah.
Missouri Valley Council show this year, when we had our banquet and had our meeting, there was a show of hands as to how many people were planning on going to Nashville, and I would say 3/4 of the people who were there put their hands up. So if that's happening all over the country,
Yeah.
it's going to
It's
be
gonna
a
be exciting.
big
Plus, I
crowd.
think we're also going to see more internationals coming to
Oh,
convention
yeah.
this year. So it's a big draw, and so if you get your hotel reservations made really, really early, it gives the convention director time to block more rooms, to
Oh, good
expand
plan.
our block. And
Good
so
plan.
that's kind of an important thing to do.
Okay.
And the hotel won't complain about that.
It's very typical that a lot of the people make their hotel reservations and their convention registrations very, very late when it's approaching the deadline. And I think this time it's going to be wise to do it
This
early.
time they might get excluded from the hotel and have to be in another hotel, and that would not be quite as much fun or quite as easy.
Oh no, that would be bad. Well, I always do things right away.
Yes, you're
It
kind of
comes-
out about that.
I am. It's like it comes out, and I'm like, okay, let's get that going.
And a week later, you're chewing on me. You haven't made your registration yet? What are you thinking?
Well, get with the
Sometimes it's a
program.
budget matter.
I know. That's when the plastic comes, just for that little bit, and then you pay it right off.
That's right.
it.
That's right.
Well, you guys have both been interviewed. In fact, Kent, I think you were the very first interview that I had for the
I
podcast.
think so.
I think you were, and I was so grateful.
He's number
I'm
one.
number
He's
one.
number one. I was so grateful that you agreed to sit down with me, because I think that you doing that paved the way for a lot of other people to sit down with me. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you guys would like to talk about, and that you would like to share, Kent, based on that. I mean, that was Missouri Valley a year ago. Was the first time I was able to do much interviewing of people.
Wow.
And
That-
it's more than a year ago. It's hard to
Yeah.
believe, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah.
I know exactly what clothing I had on, because all those interviews I had the same clothes on and I show them like months, like weeks and weeks apart, and I'd be like, oh, I have that on again. There I am. Kind of like I did that while I was in Scotland. I tried to tape my episodes early, but I didn't tape them at the same time, and ended up wearing the same thing on 2 different days.
It's continuity.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Really, I don't have anyone doing continuity for me. But
I think I may have talked about it the first time around.
yeah,
But I think more than ever, it needs to be stressed that you should grow the number of plants that you are able to manage well. Since Joyce got me on Facebook this summer, and I'm, watching things in Nerds, there are so many people who are getting excited and getting into it, and they're buying, and that can be very dangerous, because if you get too many plants and you can't manage them well and they're not doing well, you grow tired and you get frustrated. Here's Paula. And we have seen over the years people who got way too many plants,
Yes.
and they ended up stopping growing them.
I think that's a very valid point, because I think, as you guys know, I have too many plants right now still. I'm certainly down in the low 70s in terms of number of varieties, but for me that is still almost unmanageable, and I need to be back down around 50 pretty quickly, I think.
It's almost like in entertainment where you're supposed to leave the audience wanting more.
Yeah.
you kind of have to leave yourself wanting more.
That's true.
Right, because when you go to national, you're going to want to come home with a couple of new things. But if you've already got 100 varieties and you can hardly see
Keep up
straight,
with it.
if you come home with 10 plants, that's 110. And you'd think, oh, it's just as easy to take care of 110 as it is to take care of 75. No, it's not. It's
Especially
not even close.
not if you start putting down leaf cuttings of everything.
I don't do, limit your collection. I'm getting a t-shirt. It's going to say, limit your collection. I'm going to wear it to national.
and I know a lot of
Don't wear it in the sales room.
No, I won't. I always help them in the sales room. I promise I'll wear it to dinner.
The other thing that we hear a lot is from people who will say, I used to be able to grow violets and had no problems at all. And then I joined a club and all of a sudden I have bugs, or I have mildew, or I have this or that. And a lot of that comes because when you have a collection of 5 to 10 plants, it's very easy to keep up with little problems, and your plants have more space, and you're watching them closer. And as soon as you double that or triple that, which doesn't seem like that many more, you don't have as much time with each plant, and things can get away from you. And you're also exposing yourself to more sources of those problems. And so it's very hard to discipline yourself early on when you're really finding out how wonderful this hobby is. And you want to grow like those who have 3,000 plants, and 3,000 plants is just waiting for one new problem. And we've been through it when we went through problems with Botrytis blossom blight.
Botrytis blossom blight, over the years we've had cyclamen mites, thrips, foliar thrips.
We had problems with gas leak.
A gas leak. We, found out earlier this year that the pH of our water was way off, and our plants had not been growing well for a couple years. They didn't have good root systems, and we just never thought to test for the pH, and it was too high, and we quickly made adjustments using a different fertilizer and pH down in our water, and within 3 weeks I had plants that had been looking really lackluster and light green.
Wow.
And within 3 weeks they had greened up and were growing.
Yeah.
It was just amazing how quickly that change in the pH of the water
Wow.
And
made a
the
difference.
thing is, you want to call us experts, but we're not really experts as experienced.
Experienced.
But
We've been through it all.
we've been through it, and we've had to survive, and we've had the resources to be able to find the answers to our problems, and we both have a real passion for teaching. I don't think we're ever scared to admit to somebody that we have a problem, because not telling that we have a problem means that we lose an opportunity to teach others who have that same issue.
I think that's so valid. And from the beginning, here on the podcast, I have not hidden any of the issues or problems or time constraints, where things sit and they didn't get potted, and another week goes by and they still didn't get potted. I've been very upfront about that, because I think that's really important, that you can see that, first of all, well, for me, in terms of not repotting, our plants are much more forgiving than one might think, even though it's not ideal.
Yes.
But that you can keep going, and that you can make a mistake, or something doesn't like your growing conditions, and so you can let that go. I think that that's so important to know.
And it's also, I think, good for beginners to know that the show plants that they see in some of the Facebook pictures and so on that are glorious, that is not the way that plant looks every single day.
No.
Your plants come into that bloom, and they last at that level for 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then
Or
they
with
go
luck
back.
a month. But
Yeah, and then they go back to looking normal. The foliage patterns, you try to keep those looking as perfect as you can all the time.
Like today when we were doing the segment on the show plants, on judging show plants, and I had that variegated plant that had the beautiful
Really good
symmetrical
symmetry,
foliage.
yeah.
The idea is, when you're growing for show, you kind of ignore the flowers, you keep the flowers picked off, you're looking for that perfect foliage.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, speaking about the rest of the things that we filmed today, one of the things that I think is really also important, and you touched on it very briefly when you were talking about people having ramping up too quickly, having too many plants. Even though you are a commercial grower and we got to see all of your shelves, I hope you guys notice, because this is something that people have said to me before, but how much space there is around every one of your
Oh,
plants on your
yes.
shelves. They are not jammed up together
Right.
with each other.
Right.
They are growing and they have their own like little personal space. And I think that is a real piece of having air circulation. Mildew is down because your things are moving the way they should.
Some of that
Yeah.
comes from arranging the plants that way. The others is that I'm grooming off outside rows of leaves all the time.
So they don't run
Okay.
And
into
we
each other.
had an older member of the Lincoln African Violet Club who had mastered removing those outside rows of leaves, and he grew the most beautiful,
Oh.
beautiful plants. The foliage was always so nice and symmetrical, and he just kept peeling the plants back.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really interesting.
We learned something very interesting at our Omaha club meeting the other night.
Oh, tell us.
One of our members, he's our treasurer right now, he's active in the Gesnerian Society, and he is the greenhouse manager of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And our program was on fertilizer the other night, and we were talking about urea, the sources of nitrogen,
Right.
and urea
Right.
being a cheap source, and it's not available for the plants to use. You have to have the bacteria, and there's some controversy about it, but
We could do another podcast
yeah,
on fertilizer.
yeah, but no. A lot of
We'll do a
people,
special.
are trying to find fertilizer with low urea or no urea. Tom told us that if you find commercial grower size packages of fertilizer,
25-pound packages.
That's like
They-
a 29
yeah.
year supply.
they probably will not have urea. And
Because-
the same brand that is packaged in small amounts for sale to hobbyists will have urea in it.
Isn't that interesting?
And it looks exactly the same on the label, but in
You
fact,
read the ingredients.
when you read the ingredients, you'll realize that what the greenhouse grower package was a better quality.
So the big commercial growers are getting
Oh.
a better grade of fertilizer. And one of the things we switched to earlier this year was Plant Marvel Nutriculture, which is
African Violet mix.
African Violet Special, which is 14-12-14, and it has no urea in it. Comes in a 25-pound bag, and it costs nearly as much to get it shipped in from Chicago as the fertilizer itself did. And our plants are loving it. And what we're
Wow.
doing is we are repackaging it into 12-ounce containers
For your
and
club
selling it
members?
to customers.
Yeah, and you can
Oh,
buy
that's
you
great.
can buy the containers at the dollar store, so they're not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's something I would really recommend to clubs, is that the clubs buy in the 25-pound bag of the high-quality stuff
Okay.
and then repackage it and put the legal label on. There's some things that need to be on the label
Okay.
as far as saying exactly what's in it and what the source is on
Okay.
it. And then the club members and even your general public that come to those clubs, sales,
To a sale. Could
would
do
be
it.
able to
Okay.
buy this quality fertilizer.
Okay.
One
It
of the
is
things,
different.
yeah, and one of the things that in our situation, since we were having the pH problem earlier too, is there is sulfur in the Plant Marvel fertilizer, and sulfur helps to keep the pH
Okay.
down.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's
Great.
things you learn.
I know.
Things you learn all
well,
the
and
time.
that means you're always learning. I mean,
Yes.
We
there's
are
always,
always
something.
learning.
Yeah.
Always learning. That's right. You never stop. And if you ever think you can stop, just wait, because you'll get another problem that you never had before.
You know, and that's one of the great values of belonging to a club is when you're sitting and talking about stuff and you learn from other people's experience too.
Right.
And you find the same thing on Facebook on some of the African violet
Mm-hmm.
things. But there's, a club situation when there's just a bunch of people sitting around talking, you can pick up some really
Good
good
info,
information.
Yeah. And things change. You've got Helen Van Pelt Wilson's books,
Old book,
several
yeah.
of them. And she wrote a follow-up book to that great first beginning book that's such a Bible. It was just a question and answer book, like 1,000 questions about
Oh, yeah.
violence. And one of the questions in there that I found a number of years ago was, what about thrips? Are they a problem for African violets? And it was probably the early 60s when this book
Yeah.
was written. And she said, no, thrips are not much of a problem for African violets. The biggest problem for African violets is root nematode.
I was just going to say, it's nematodes.
I think it actually
bet
went
she's
back to the early 50s.
No, I think the question and answer book came
Did
later.
that come
though.
later?
Yeah.
Okay.
Later, yeah.
But
Okay.
anyway, at that point, nematodes were a huge issue. And
And
everybody
that was
learned.
because people were using
garden soil,
garden
weren't they?
soil
Right, and
in
so
their potting
garden
mixes.
soil.
people learned and adjusted and got that problem corrected. And then suddenly, Western flower thrips became a very serious problem. And then, because of Western flower thrips, now INSV is this problem that has to be dealt with also as a virus.
Okay.
So, it just,
Because the
things
thrips
evolve.
spread
They
it.
spread it.
Right. Things just kind of change, and you have to keep paying attention or you'll fall behind.
That's why I do love, like I did an episode a few weeks ago about all the books, that I
Mm-hmm.
have, and that of course you have more than half of what I used to have because I gave
Yeah,
a
that's
lot
true.
of Jones to you. But I do like to read what people were doing, things like
Mhm.
that. What was happening back in the early '60s or the late
Mhm.
'50s, and I love Ann Teneri's book, about our violet heritage and the
Yes.
stories that she tells in that,
Yes.
and I thought that was great. And I had more than at least one viewer who wrote and said, "I just got that off of eBay," or "I just got it off of Amazon, and I had to read it." I was like, "That's great."
Well, and it is great because some of those books are treasures.
Yeah.
And as violet growers who had those books start to pass away or change their estates in the very least, and people start selling off these books, they're going to be trashed if nobody buys them on
Nobody
eBay.
knows,
So
yeah.
it's nice that you've created a little market.
Oh, yay me! Well, this has just been so great to be with you on this weekend and to kind of bring some closure to All About African Violets. It's hard to say goodbye, it's hard to think that we're done, that I'm done. But I know I knew that when I would run out of material, it would be very clear, and that became very clear to me a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
About a month or so ago, I was just like,
Yeah.
I think we're done. Oh, Apollo's snoring. Are we boring you? Are we boring you? He's such a cute dog, you guys. He's snoring. So see, we're out of material. It's gotten boring.
Time
Poor
to say
Apollo.
goodbye.
He's like, you woke me up, Mom. You woke me up. Thank you so much for being here with me and
Oh.
for letting me be here with you
We're
in
so
your
glad
home.
you came.
It's been a wonderful whirlwind trip, and I'm so grateful.
And
I'm so grateful to both
for
of you.
everybody out there in the audience, thank you for
Thank you.
everything you did, because it really, from a standpoint of building membership in AVSA, teaching more people about African violets, it's just been a wonderful tool to be able to send people to the podcast where they can really see things and see things developing and understand.
Thank you.
So
Well,
thank you.
people you can still see all of the episodes. It will not be available on iTunes after another few weeks, but it will always, at least for the foreseeable future, all of the episodes will be available on the website, where you can go and view them on allaboutafricanviolets.com.
Maybe you could
So-
compile them and turn them into a version that you could actually sell as a unit.
Well, I thought about that. That's actually kind of an interesting idea, but unfortunately, they're not studio grade videos. The lighting is sometimes
Yeah, but
iffy, and the
you know-
sound and snoring dogs, and
But the good studios don't have this quality material.
Well, there is that.
See?
So you
Okay.
never know. You never know what can happen.
You never
You never
know.
know. All right, thank you. I love you both very
Love you
much, and thank you. And I'll be right back. it's true. This is the last regular episode of All About African Violets, and I just really didn't know how else to tell you guys, and so I let the video tell you, and it's really hard. This is really hard. I can't really believe that I'm done, but I know that the timing is right for me to be done, and I also felt that I would have a smaller chance of crying if Joyce and Kent were there making me laugh. So that's the other reason I used the video to tell you that news. And I wrote some notes for myself because I have things I really want to share with you. So put my glasses on and I'm going to read them to you. As I mentioned, maybe if I could just, I made the type a little bigger. Maybe I don't have to put my glasses on every time. As I mentioned in the interview with Joyce and Kent, I did have a vision for this when I began, and I knew that unlike a knitting podcast, which can go on forever, I knew that this podcast would have an end, and the end is here. When I got back from Scotland, I mean, I knew, as I mentioned, that, I was scribbling and writing in that hotel room and going, I think that this could happen, and this and this and this and this and this. And I really did feel that I would have, if I could get everything that I wanted, I would have about 18 months worth of material, and that is pretty much exactly where we are before I would begin to really repeat myself. And so I realized when I got back from Scotland at the end of October that I was pretty much out of material. And the trip, Joyce and I cooked up that last minute trip to Nebraska. I mean, literally it was on the Monday, and I went on Saturday night, and it was what my cousin would call a flying trip. And it literally was a flying trip because I flew out there Saturday night. I spent all day Sunday with them, and we filmed all of the tour of the shop and the tour of the growing area and the design section and the plant judging section, and then the final interview. We did all of that on Sunday, and I flew back. We got up at 3:00 in the morning. Kent and Joyce are really good friends because they drove me back to Omaha to catch a 5-something or 6-something in the morning flight that took me right back to Midway, and I got on the Orange Line and went right to work. It was crazy. It took me a week to recover. But it seemed like the perfect time to do this. I had wanted to get out there and see them and spend some time with them. And since I knew I was running out of material, it just seemed ideal. So that's what we did. And I want to tell you guys that it has been my honor and my pleasure to come into your home every week. Or in the case of Paula Bell, to come into your car. Paula. It has really been my honor to be here with you and to have you join me week after week. I can't thank you enough for watching and for your encouragement and for your questions, but I will try. So please indulge me for a moment. I am going to put my glasses on, and it's important that I want to read this to you guys. I had no idea if the podcast would succeed and if it would build an audience. And I got the website, I put that together, I built a Facebook page, and then for the first episode, I sent an email to every person I know, whether or not they grew plants, and which is the joke about, people tune in just to see what my hair looks like. And today, as I mentioned, it's pretty wild because I had a pretty big hat on. But I asked them to watch at least the first episode, and then I asked them to please pass it on to everyone that they knew. And they did. And and I have a lot of friends you guys who are African violet growers, and quite a few of you tuned in from the very beginning and from the very first episode. And All About African Violets has succeeded far beyond my wildest dreams or expectations, and pretty much from the beginning built an audience that is international in scope. So thank you for that. And I am so grateful to you guys that I have had the opportunity to meet so many of you in person, and so thankful for all of you and those of you who have come right up to me at National last year and told me that you watched, whether or not you ever left a comment, you just came and said, I watched the podcast and I really like it. And so thank you for doing that. It really encouraged me and helped me continue. and it was great. And I'm so grateful also to every single person who sat down with me in these last 18 months. And in particular, I am very grateful to Kent Stork for agreeing to be the first person to do that. And I have no doubt that he truly paved the way for everybody else who sat down after him, because, they kind of went, well, Kent did it, I'll do it, And it was just wonderful. I mean, and everyone who followed him from all the way through was really, I just can't tell you how lucky I am to have had literally a who's who in the African violet world of people who have sat down with me to talk to you guys. And I love that you guys did that. So thank you to every person who sat down, and I can't, the interviews were among the most popular of the podcasts. So thank you for that. I am very grateful for my friend and mentor Joyce Stork, and expert Joyce Stork, who is there literally from the very beginning. Joyce, I never could have done this without you. So I can't thank you enough. And Jeff, I thank you too. My other expert, Jeff, Dr. Jeff Smith, thank you so much for not only letting me come to Muncie and have one of the most successful series of interviews of the entire podcast, but also for your patience and your information and your science and your willingness to share your knowledge. Thank you. Thank you both so much. Many of you have commented, and I mentioned this in the interview with Joyce and Kent. Many of you have commented that you feel like it takes a lot of work to do a podcast like this, and you are correct. It does. It does. But before everything even got on the air, there was a lot of behind the scenes work that had to happen. And so I would really like to thank my awesome graphic designer, Chris Carlson. For those of you who are knitters, she is also a tremendous knitwear designer, and she is Nifty Red on Ravelry. She's the one that made the website look so great, that helped me with the carabiners, with all of that, with the business cards that I had. She is a tremendous designer and does a lot of great work. So her email or her website is at the end in the credits of the podcast. If you're looking for a graphic designer, I can't recommend her any more highly. She's awesome. And I want to thank Ted Yoder for giving me access to his music. He was thrilled to have his music be heard by all of you. I know some of you have purchased his CDs or listened to some of the music on his website. I gotta tell you, if you ever get the chance to see him and hear him in person, do it, because he is just amazing. When you watch him play that dulcimer, you can't even imagine his hands could move that quickly. And I thank you, Ted. I thank you so much, because every time I hear Moon on the Water, which is the opening theme and lately the ending of the outro music as we end the podcast, every time I hear that music, I think I should start talking to you guys, because the podcast has such a recognizable theme with that music. And so, Ted, thank you so much for that. So, well, I hope I haven't left anyone out. I thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. And, if this was the Oscars, they would have been playing me off, the orchestra would have been playing me off the stage 5 minutes ago. So let's go and let's take a last look at what's on the stands. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, we're here in the guest room. Time to take a look at what's on the stands one last time. Here's House of Amani, Chiffon Masquerade, EK Sky Azure. This top shelf looking kind of empty. Second shelf, I just took some leaves off of Powwow. A few more at the culture break there. Fresh Air, wanting to grow straight up. Not quite sure what's up with that. I think it may be a little too close to the lights. Here's Santee Sioux, looking good. That's Fisherman's Paradise. I just turned it, and it is also growing straight up, and this is Zima Ulbeetzia. Let's go down to the basement. Well, we're down here in the basement, and everything's looking pretty good down here. As I mentioned last week, I really think that at this time of year, The plants do like it down here. There's Milky Way Trail, really blooming pretty well. Sundown Trail. Rhapsody Annie. Here is Radar's Magic. And here's Radar's Tensi. This finally came into bloom again. Here's our challenge plant from Cara Lee. I am gonna pot this one up, guys, and hopefully on a special you'll see it at a show, all right? Cross your fingers. Thing looking good there. Same here. Got something trying to bloom there. That is Chimensis. This is Chimensis EE. That's the Mather EE. It's just getting ready to bloom. I gotta get this stuff potted up. Let's go take a look at the Streptocarpus shelf. Well, I do need a little cleanup here on Heartland's White Gold, but man, it is so beautiful. And we've got 4 blossoms now on Dale's Polar Berries. And you know, I was thinking about this on my way home. I've had this plant since the Illinois State Show, and I want to say that was back in April. It took all this time for it to bloom. Here is Party Pinafore. You can really see the red today on Midnight Flame. And Salmon Sunset. Let's go upstairs to the sunroom. Well, it's dark, as you can see, but here we are up in the sunroom. And everybody's looking pretty good here. And look at the blossom on Nessa's Satin Rose. Like I've mentioned before, I've always really liked this plant. It has huge blossoms for a semi. I've never been successful in really growing it, so cross your fingers. Here's Arapaho just getting ready to open. Rupicola really blooming. That's Ma's Old Fashioned. And down here we've got Tatanka. And I've got a sucker on this. You see it right there? On this plant of Fisherman's Paradise. And there is a sucker on Tatanka. And you know, Kent, I asked Kent about this, Kent Stork. This is one of his plants, because he said nobody else ever told him that his plants suckered for them. It must just be me. Here is Rhapsody Clementine, really looking beautiful. It's always been a favorite of mine. Rebel's Night Breeze, just gorgeous. Columnia Apollo, a sweet little bloom on Texas Hot Chili. And you can see that the calyxes are getting larger on the Escananthus obconicus. It's really doing well. And down here, I had shifted these plants back, Roulette over here in bloom. But the tube went back out, so what are you gonna do? But this is, let's go take a quick look at the big box violet. Well, here it is, just hanging out, just resting, and I do hope to get it repotted one of these days. How many times have you guys heard me say that? That's the look at what's on the stands. I'll be right back. Lots of things in bloom for this last episode. I'm so happy you got to see some of them. And you'll see more because, you know, this is the last regular episode. But as I mentioned, I am hoping to do some specials here and there. And you'll see these plants again, hopefully at a show, maybe at National. Cross your fingers. Cross your fingers. Well, it's time to get the bail money ready, and unfortunately I don't have any events to share with you, but one of the things I'd like to encourage you guys to do is check the AVSA website on a regular basis for events, for convention info, for all of that stuff. And in fact, you can, I just made my hotel reservation for National. I made it this week because the info's already there, and I thought, you know, I'm going to take Kent's advice to heart, and I already poked Joyce about it, said, come on, I made my reservation, make your reservation. So you can always go out there and check, and I do encourage you to do that. And I encourage you to join the AVSA if you haven't already. You get the magazine, and and you'll love it. You'll be able to stay in touch with people all over the world and in that way, and read wonderful articles, see the great photos, and go to National. I can't encourage you enough, particularly in 2014. Go to Nashville, go to National, and I will see you there. Okay? Well, it is time to keep moving forward, and it is literally time to keep moving forward now. I have to put my glasses back on and share a few things, a few more things with you. This is really hard. I want to tell you that the most recent episodes, maybe 5 most recent episodes, will remain on iTunes until the end of the year. And all of the podcast episodes will always be available on the website for the foreseeable future. So they're there. You can still watch them. You can go back and look for something. You can still, and I hope that you will, continue to refer people to the website so that they can watch the episodes, because it never ceases to amaze me that people still continue to find the podcast and say, oh, I went back from the very beginning and watched them all. So they will be there for you to be able to do that, and for new people and new growers that you would like to refer them to the podcast. I hope that you will do that. Obviously, I will still be monitoring the website for questions. The Facebook page will stay up. You can ask questions there as well. And I'm still happy to, if I don't know the answer, I am still very happy to ask my experts, Joyce and Dr. Jeff, to share their expertise with you. And I have 2 last requests of you guys. As I've mentioned, I do plan to do some specials in the months to come, and hopefully go to National. I'm going to be at National and hope to shoot there and kind of do a recap like we did last year. I hope you'll enjoy that. But one of the 2 things would really help me. I have these two requests in the coming months, and you can help me with this, because if you could leave me a comment on the website or on Facebook and give me some feedback information first, I would love to know what your favorite podcast episodes have been and why they are your favorites. And second, I would love to know what topics you would like to know about, meaning maybe I never touched on them, something I never talked about that you really want to know about, or if there is something that you would like more and more in-depth information about. That could help me in terms of maybe some special episodes and looking forward. You know, there was mention made of DVDs in the interview. I don't know if that could happen, but the information that you share with me, if that does happen, could be instrumental in how it happens and what it looks like. So I would love it if you guys would do that. You guys are the best. You really are. And it is really hard for me to say goodbye. But it is time now to keep moving forward. So let me leave you with these things. Keep moving forward in your lives. Keep learning. Have fun. Share your knowledge. Share your plants. Be joyful. And remember to limit your collection. I hope that your days will continue to be filled with all the things that you love. Good growing. And although the next time won't be next week, I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.